Good evening and welcome to the Voice of Leadership episode for the Voice of Legacy on the Off the Record, the Real Talk podcast. I'm your host, Allie Braswell, and you know, if it's Wednesday at 6 o'clock, it's time for the Off the Record, the Real Talk podcast. If you've been walking with us through the Voices of Leadership season, thank you for staying on this journey with us. And this series is all about leadership not being a title, but being more about people. It's about the voice of leaders that they leave behind long after the position is gone. What we're talking about here in this episode, titled The Voice of Legacy, legacy isn't about what you achieve. It's about what continues because you were there. It's about the people you shaped. It's about the mission, the culture you influenced, and the standards that you refuse to compromise. This conversation is about the leadership that endures. I'm so excited to bring in our next guest. As you've seen, our guest today is a leader whose career reflects service, stewardship, and a lasting impact. Lieutenant General Gwen Bingham, U.S. Army retired, is just a close friend and an incredible leader. General Bingham has spent a lifetime leading soldiers and building institutions and setting conditions for others to succeed. Her leadership reminds us that legacy isn't built on the moments of recognition. It's built in moments of responsibility. General Bingham, welcome to the show.
Good evening, Allie, and such a joy to be with you. It's been a while since you and I have engaged, but just a delight to join you this evening.
Well, it's so good to have you here, and I want to ground our conversation in real conversation, the real talk. And what we're going to talk about today is something that I've always seen since the first day I met you, just your leadership, your ability to influence others. And, it's just been an infectious smile, but an endearing spirit and a come on, let's go do this together attitude that has really inspired us. But, I can go on, but I would love for you to share a bit more about yourself and your background.
Well, thank you so much, Allie. And, when people say nice things about me, like you just said, and I'm so grateful, I tell them this because it's personal. All that I am and ever hope to be is but for the love of Jesus Christ, first and foremost. An amazing husband of 42 years, great parents, my family, and a whole heap of folks, as we say in Troy, Alabama, where I was born, who coached, taught, trained, encouraged, and inspired me to successes along the way. For surely you cannot get there by yourself, lest you fool yourself. And I'm certainly very humbled and grateful for the journey. Allie, I know you know this. I'm the fourth of five kids, born into a military family. My father was an enlisted man. He was an Army medic. He and my mother were married 54 years before life took them apart. But I grew up between Fort Hood, Texas for 10 years, and then Fort Sam Houston, Texas for another 3 years, my first 13 years of life. So a lot of people ask me now, how did you end up in Austin, Texas? I said, well, my first 13 years, I grew up as a kid and moved back to Alabama, where I went to high school and college. And then I came back to Fort Hood. Your son was there for another 6.5 years. So all total, before I retired, I had lived in Texas for 20 years. When I look back at my life, I do a lot of reflection. I think daily reflection is good. But when I think about my parents, who I stand up on their shoulders for sure. I think about both my dad and my mom. My dad retired as an Army first sergeant right on the field of Brooke Army Medical Center there at Fort Sam Houston. But he knew something about the culture in the Army. And he said to me one day, after he commissioned me and he pinned on my second lieutenant bars, he says, daughter, you're kind of short. He says, people may have a tendency to take you for granted. He says, every now and then you'll need to talk a little loud and say a few cuss words to get your point across. And I tell people, I tried it and I'll be damned if it didn't work. From my mom, that's a true story. From my mom was a stay-at-home mom. Again, 5 kids. She brought us up in a very rich Christian environment, and she taught us all the golden rule: treat people the way that you want to be treated. And I think with both of those, that rich foundational background, I began to find myself as I got commissioned and went off to college. And I will tell you, there are two significant emotional events, and I think it's pertinent because it really served as the foundation and impetus for the leader that I became over time. And one happened at my college alma mater, where I was, my first 2 years, I was an AB student. I was there on a 4-year ROTC scholarship. So I had done well in high school before that. And certainly my first 2 years, I had a high GPA. And then I kind of slid into the social side of college life, which my beloved sorority, and you know that story well. And anyway, my grades began to slip a little bit. And I thought, ooh, you're on scholarship. You can't afford that. You need to do something to get back on track with your high GPA. And so as we go through the Rolodex of classes to take, where can I find that easy A? You go through the roster, and I picked sociology 101. I love people, and I thought, just how hard can it be? Famous last words. So I step into the class the first day, and the professor talked very quickly. And he said to all of us, there's going to be 2 exams in this class. One's going to be worth 40% of your grade, the first one. And the final second exam would be worth 60% of your grade. And I tell people now, kind of funny, if I knew that, what I knew now, I probably would have dropped the course, but I'm no quitter. I stuck with it. Long story short, Allie, my first grade out of that up 2 grades was a 60. And I thought, this is definitely not going the way this easy A course was supposed to be. And I tell young people, if you ever taken a test where you go to the first question, you don't quite know it. Second doesn't get really better. You flip it on the backside, and that's, you're like, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And so I went to the professor and told him what had happened. And I asked him how I might change my study technique to prepare myself for his, what would become his final exam. And he looked at me, and I can still remember this blank stare on his face. And he said to me, well, it's a known fact that people like you don't do well in education. Wow. And I was taken aback. I did not expect that. And I could just feel the rage building up inside of me. And so rather than to see him or let him see me cry tears of what he would have thought were weakness, I stood up, I thanked him for his time, and I left his office. Wow. And as the tears began to roll down my cheek, trying to process what had just happened, I thought to myself, who could I tell and who would believe me? After all, I was just a second semester sophomore at the time. Fast forward, you will know that I graduated. That's the good news story. But I fast forward to when I'm now a captain, promotable. And I had a counseling session with my senior rater. And this time it wasn't an ugly conversation at all. But I remember him saying to me, he says, Captain Promotable Bingham, he says, I can just about assure you that you'll never, ever be seriously considered for battalion command. And I said, well, why do you say that, sir? He says, well, you don't have enough division time. And I said, well, sir, I've gone everywhere the Army's asked me to go. And I just want to assure you I'm going to do the best job that I possibly can. And so what did I learn from those 2 incidents, just reflecting back? One, the first incident, which was really racism at my college, I learned not to treat anybody that way and not to let anybody feel as if they were inferior or as if they couldn't contribute. From the second instance, I learned never to play God with people's life and tell them what they can and cannot become, because from the way I see it, if you can conceive it and believe it a little bit with God's help and a lot of hard work and perseverance, you can achieve that which you dare to dream. And so I've sort of taken that foundationally to every job that I've held in the military and even now outside of the military. I came in on that 4-year Army ROTC scholarship, and my mantra was 4 years. And I tell people, oops, something happened along the way. Not only did I meet and
You
follow
came in for 4, but how long did you stay?
38 years. 38 years. I fell in love with the man I met and married 42 years ago. And I fell in love with the vocation called the U.S. Army and the military at large, just because it's such a people business. I met some incredible people from all walks of life in every part of this country and outside of this country. And I tell you, I'm so grateful for the journey.
Well, that's just a great segue. And thanks for sharing. And, if you're listening, folks, we have an incredible conversation going on here. Stay tuned. Make sure you download right here, right now. And if you're listening, make sure that you tune in, get your pad out, because she was just dropping all kinds of golden nuggets there, And I think one of the things is you use that energy.
That's right.
To get through. So you channeled it. But then when you were a young captain, here you are again being faced with someone trying to prejudge you. But how do leaders ensure that their legacy is built through people, not position? Because I think you leverage that senior raider to help you inspire you to go on to do great things.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And a good point. It really, when you're going through as a young captain or even field grade leader, I didn't see myself 38 years beyond that, and certainly never as a general officer. But again, it goes back to the foundation that my parents instilled in me: treat people the way you want to be treated, the golden rule. And so basically, I, as a leader, platoon leader, company commander, upwards through major, lieutenant colonel ranks, I was responsible for a number of people. And so my thought was, I have these soldiers and civilians, as it were, that I was responsible for. So I knew I had to lead them well. I had to teach and train them well. I had to make sure that they knew how to maintain themselves, stay physically fit. And I had to be caring of their families to understand what was happening in their lives that might detract from the mission and their ability to do their work well. When you have the trust, and I tell people, trust is a simple 5-letter word, but it packs a punch. You cannot tell a soldier to do PT, physical training, in the morning if you're laying up in the rack yourself at 6 o'clock. It just won't compute. And so I understood from something that I actually heard General Honore say I think I was a major at the time. He says, your audio don't match your video, in that Cajun, spirit and voice of his. And I remembered that going into my battalion command, my audio must match my video. And so what I'm telling people, I myself must be doing and willing to do. And so there's just so many nuggets that I've learned just along the way in my own journey that really keeps me grounded, and it makes me aware of what could be happening in my subordinates' lives. But my responsibility as their leader is to be the best leader that I possibly can be.
And you just bring it out so wonderfully that it's and I have met General Honore here to tell you, it didn't take many days before he used that term, say your audio must match your video there,
Absolutely.
Alan. And so unpacking that, though, for those who may not understand that, you really are talking about people versus position. It's not just your title that grants you the authority or builds the trust. It's the way you treat people.
That's right.
And it's the way that you pour into them and help them grow into the leader that they can become. And if you just unpack that just for a little bit, if you would share, what are some of the qualities that, like you said, if you're going to tell a young soldier to go and PT in the afternoon, you better be prepared to PT in the afternoon or PT in the morning with them, because a lot of times that's where they're looking, is for their leaders to lead the way.
That's right.
America, I think it's the same way. Would you share on that, Tom?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one I really like, because I think it comes down to, in the Army, we have the responsibility as leaders to counsel our subordinates. I'll never forget, I was counseling my battalion S3, which is a major position, and I was the battalion commander at the time. And he had somewhere between 12 and 14 years in. And he says to me, "Ma'am, you're really going to counsel me?" And I said, "Absolutely." And he says, "Ma'am, I've never been counseled in my career." Now, this is a 12-year,
Wow.
14-year veteran who's never been physically counseled. I do counseling both in oral counseling, many times, oftentimes on the spot opportunities, and I do at least 3 to 6 month counselings. What you do well, what your strengths are, where your areas of deficiencies are, and maybe kind of help them roadmap a way to shore up that. But I think being able to give that honest feedback and be candid with people is just the only way to go. Also, as a leader, I had to give them the standard, tell them what right looked like. Here's our goals, both at the tactical, sometimes operational and strategic level, and giving them that periodic feedback to say, hey, here's what we're doing well, and here's some of the areas that we need to improve on. It's good. These are the things we need to do. I had a system of having town halls, particularly when I was commanding civilians. A couple of my general officer roles, I had a number of civilians who worked inside my formation. And at the beginning of that town hall, I would come in and I say, okay, what's your morale meter like? On a scale of 1 to 10, who's a 10? Nobody stood up. I'd say, raise your hand.
Wow.
Up. Okay, who's a 9? None. Who's an 8? Maybe 1 or 2 hands would slip up. Who's a 7? A few more would slip up. Okay, who's a 6 and below? My first town hall at one of my organizations, half the room were 6 and below in terms of morale. And so I had to unpack that and try to get a sense of, I said, okay, what would I need to do to get you to that 7 or 8 kind of band of where I wanted you? 7, 8, 9 would be great.
Right.
I don't know if we could ever be a 10, but certainly in the 7, 8. And so they started popping up their hands and telling me what kinds of things that they would want to do and want to see done. And so then being able to take that feedback and then turn that into actionable actions from my vantage point as a leader, man, the morale, but 3 months later when we had the next quarter, I had some 9s, raise their hands. So it's about that consistency, but that goes back to being able to listen to what our people are telling us. And also, I, as a leader, when I screwed up, I had to be honest about it. And I had to confess, hey, guys, I'm sorry. I screwed it. I screwed this up. I'll never forget my boss. I was a chief of staff in a 2-star command. And I really screwed up a program that we had. As a chief of staff, I was responsible for it. And he was kind about it, but it was my first chewing. And I was a colonel at the time, and I thought, man, that did not feel good, and it didn't taste good. And so afterwards, I got the group together and said, hey, guys, I failed us, and I want to assure you that's not going to happen again. And so we all really banded together. People like it when you're honest. They like it when you can admit that you didn't do something well. Maybe you failed at something altogether. They like that. And really, they went out of their way to make sure that never happened again for us as a team. I heard somebody say team was an acronym for together, everyone achieves more. I really like that. And I like teamwork, and I like being able to finding a team at this level and being able to build everybody up to the next level, because that's what I owe you as your leader, as your commander, and what other position that I might hold.
You just gave so many golden nuggets there, and I really want to break them out so that people hear that. The most important thing I heard is leaders take accountability.
Yes.
And leaders are honest and truthful and don't walk around as though they're infallible, right?
That's right.
I can remember also as being a young Marine when I met the Commandant of the Marine Corps for the first time, and it was a chance encounter. I'm running down a hallway trying to get to his formation. And this guy turns around the corner and hits me in the middle of the chest. I'm going, I jump up with that Marine Corps bravado and all these stars are showing up. He was like, Marines don't run. I was like, yes, sir. And I popped to attention and he was like, I hope I can catch you off guard. Al Gray was that type of leader, similar to yourself, that really was, he knew he had caught this young sergeant in a vulnerable way, and he didn't hit me that hard, but it was just the fact that I'm coming around the corner, somebody hit me in the chest.
Unexpected.
But I think what you shared in that was one of the key words I love that you shared, Gwen, was your vulnerability.
Yes.
To be able to say, I didn't get it right.
That's right.
And then your team got behind you and said, don't worry, ma'am, at that rank of colonel, don't worry, we're going to make sure you get it right.
And we did, working as a team.
And it takes that teamwork. And I do like that acronym as well, Together Each Achieves More, because it's, in leadership, I was told once, if you're leading, make sure you turn around and see if anybody's following. Otherwise, you're on a long walk by yourself. And I think that's what you just demonstrated in that, just to break it down for folks, sharing that vulnerability, being open enough to admit when you're wrong. Then when you are correcting someone, they may have a different way of receiving that correction or that counseling. And to hear that a person had been in a position 12 to 14 years without ever having a verbal
written counseling
or written counseling, it's just amazing. But it happens more than not.
That's right.
One of the things I have seen in corporate America is when we promote people to the rank or the position of supervisor or manager, are we giving them the tools to manage?
Mm-hmm.
Giving them the tools to lead? Because without that feedback, you end up seeing this person, and then you all of a sudden show up and say, that's not meeting the need. And they're like, well, you never told me.
Right.
Sometimes when you hear people learn about leadership and they say, well, no one ever, this is just the way we do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is the way it's been done does not mean it's right. So kudos to you for being able to step forward and help people see that and move that forward. So I told you all to tune into this podcast because nuggets are going to be dropped all the way through this. And I'm, so happy to move on to this next question because I think it really positions well our conversation. What should leaders be doing now, General Bingham, to make sure their influence outlasts their tenure?
Yeah. I would say I had this list, and you might even remember it, that I used to call Bingham's Top 10. David Letterman was popular back in the day, and I came in the Army in 1981 to date myself. But I think one of the things that we can all do, and I tell people beyond the remembering the golden rule and treat everyone with dignity and respect, I think keeping a positive attitude always, because I tell folks keeping a positive attitude will take us all one half the distance. And being able to coach, teach, and train your subordinates, being empathetic, talking with them, and having time for them, I think is just speaks volumes to the type of leader that I know I wanted to be. And I've had so many mentors that have poured into me. I wanted to be able to share that with the subordinates that worked as a part of my formations and inside of my organization. Because I came into the Army with that 4-year mantra, Allie, I told you about early on, I never thought about the conversation of legacy. It never hit me because I thought, oh, I'll be out in 4 years, maybe 6 at the most. My husband and I were at Fort Bragg at the 4-year mark, and we were having such a jolly good time. He was jumping out of perfectly great airplanes. I was chairborne on the COSCOM side of the house at that time. And something clicked with me there that I just was really growing both professionally and personally, but learning my craft and learning so many new things that I was intrigued with that. So I would tell my subordinates, never say never, because you just might find yourself in a position that you don't plan for and you excel in. And so you want to keep your options open. And I think if we learn our craft, we learn it well. We read all the time throughout the week, always trying to improve our intellect and our knowledge and the job skills that we have out there. Somebody's going to take notice of you as a person and say, "Hey, I want to bring you on as a mentee. I want to help you because I see something in you that is impressive. I see that hunger, that thirst for knowledge, that hunger to be good and to be better every day." And so just being able to believe in someone and believe that they can, go the distance and achieve that, as I mentioned before, where I conversely had someone say, "You'll never ever be a battalion commander." Well, no, don't tell somebody what they can and cannot do. See in and be able to say, "Hey, you got really good skills in A, B, C, D. Let me help you get that to the next level." And it's amazing when you believe in people, how they respond to that positivity and that positive uplift.
And that is such a golden nugget there, because it's been the mentors in my life that have helped me to be able to achieve a little kid from the dirt roads of Oviedo, Florida, to being an equivalent to a 3-star general. Now, I'm not going to even claim that I had the responsibility you had, but to even be able to walk in a room and be told, "You're sitting in the wrong seat, sir. You're supposed to sit up there." And I'm like, "No, that's where all the stars are," because when I served, I was a staff non-commissioned officer on active duty. But to be able to, it was the foundations of other people pouring into me.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Seeing something in me to say that I can make a difference. If you have a little polishing and a little coaching, I'm sure they had to bring out some grinding tools on me to get rid of some of the rough edges.
I don't believe that, but I hear you.
Please go ahead.
No, I was just, you prompted me to what you just said, and I absolutely agreed with you. My mother, she had a high school degree, but she was a grammarian. And she would always correct our English when we used poor English. And she would tell us, when you open your mouth to speak, always have something of substance to say. And I never, ever forgot that, because when you're sitting in a room where there's either nobody that looks like you or there's very few people that look like you, you're going to stand out naturally. And so when, General Petraeus saw me in a room of the general officer course folks that were in his at his building, he says, "I'll take the first question from you." And he picked on Gwen Bingham. And I was ready. I had a great question for him. And he even said, "Wow, that's a great question." So, the thought is when you're sitting in a forum and you're sitting in a conference room or you're sitting in a meeting, engage in that meeting such that you're always prepared to ask questions when you're called upon to do so. And it just sort of goes back to being prepared, do your homework, so that you don't feel nervous. Because when I say learn your craft well, read every day and work productively every day, yes, that's what we have to do to help ourselves be prepared for the next level. And so with that, I found myself feeling nervous when I wasn't prepared. And so I spent many a week, month, years just burning the midnight oil, trying to make sure that I knew as much about a subject that I was going to be asked to present. And, it's tiring, but that's the way you get ahead.
But that is that preparation that you must do in order to be able to be a leader. It's one thing to be called a leader. It's another to actually step into the role. I think I saw a quote once that said, you'll be defined by the actions that you take when given the opportunity to take the lead.
Yeah.
And, it stayed with me forever because it was that preparation that allowed me to be able to grow the career that would one day have Secretary Fanning deem me fit to become a civilian aide to the Secretary of the Army. As we brought this down to our final few moments, it's amazing that we have been here, 30 minutes already, but I can talk with you for hours on end, that. But I want to leave people with, you didn't go in. I love your words. I didn't go in the Army to build legacy, but you did. You served from the front lines as a second lieutenant to leadership of watching and growing to leading an entire command across the world. When you were in those roles, when your leadership chapter comes to that end, what do you want people to carry forward because of you? When you were leaving the Army, what did you want those leaders? Because I know some of your mentees, like Lieutenant General. Well, I don't have her permission to put her name on here, but we know who we're talking about. The former provost of the Army. She is just an incredible person. But I talked with her. She says, "Well, I just modeled after Gwen Bingham." And then I talked to Ashley Davis. Well, I do have permission to drop her name here. She's like, General Bingham was a big influence on watching you, especially other women in the military, and which is deemed a man's environment.
Right.
Environment. But it was so important that you set this precedent for them to follow, this image of what they could be. Because a lot of times, as I talked with General Brown when he was Joint Chiefs of Staff, and we had he left some indelible words on me. He says, "Allie, they got to be able to see it in order to be it."
Yes, I agree with that. And I've heard him say that. Absolutely. I would tell you, Allie,
say to all of those young ladies who followed you, and Donna, if you're listening to this, I didn't have permission to mention your last name. It's the only reason I didn't finish. But so much respect for all of the ladies, the women that I have met in the military who are strong leaders who, in order, some people would say they bent rules for you to get there. I know differently that you excelled in order to be seen, and to get 3 stars, Gwen Bingham, on your shoulder, to be able to lead an entire command across the world. You did some things to get you there in preparing. That I'll ask that question. When your leadership chapter ended, what did you want people to carry forward because of you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll go back to tell you, I'm just so grateful to the good Lord above for everything that he instilled in me and enabled me to be, see, and do. 2 words readily come to mind: competence and confidence. You got to have them. Competence, as I described before, by learning your craft and learning it well. Read daily. Learn from others. I love learning new things. And so when I was sent to White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico, I knew nothing about that. And somebody said, "Hey, ma'am, we'd like for you to talk on a space conference." And I was like, "Huh? Space conference?" And so, I found out that there was a whole new world out there in the Department of Defense at that time that became known to me. And so being able to do a little, as you said, preparation, read, turn on that midnight oil and learn up as much as I could before I got there. And then once I got there, to be able to lean in on my people, to go out to the range and spend hours with them, learning from place to place what they did, how they did it. They got joy out of that because it was like, hey, I'm getting to take the general around. And it was fun and intriguing. And so being able to, again, work as a team and enjoy being able to engage with my people to learn them. Who they were and to learn what their strengths were was just fantastic. And then confidence, being able to exude that confidence, because now I'm no longer the green person who doesn't know anything about White Sands Missile Range. I feel like I learned in spades on a daily basis, but to exude that confidence, because your people, they are assured, self-assured by a confident leader who's competent. And so I say those two things, and I too am a Donna fan, and I won't say her last name, but she's such a great leader. And I will tell you, my first general officer boss said this to me. He says, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. My last week before my retirement ceremony, I was at the post exchange, and I had a person come up to me and says, General Bingham, ma'am, I just want to congratulate you on your upcoming retirement. She says, ma'am, I just got to tell you. She says, you have never changed. You have been the same person since I met you as a lieutenant colonel. And I just want to shake your hand and thank you. Well, I had probably changed in a way of maturing through the process of being, a lieutenant colonel to a 3-star general. But my basic premise for the way I treat people really hasn't changed. I think back to what my mom told me about the golden rule: treat people the way you want to be treated, and they will rise up to that thought. And so that has always been the foundation for who I am, the foundation for who I became. And I just give thanks to God for giving me the humility to understand that, nothing's promised to any of us. It's hard earned sometimes, but I'm just grateful for all of what I've had the opportunity to be, see, and to do.
You are awesome. I'm a big fan, and have always been since our first time I met a young Brigadier General Bingham.
That's right.
And
2010.
In another crazy post in the Army. It was kind of interesting being a Marine and doing all this wonderful work in the Army. But thank you so much for being a friend. Thank you so much for being the quality leader that you are. And what I take away from this conversation is what stands out to me is really that legacy isn't loud, but it is consistent. Legacy isn't boastful, but it is values based. Legacy, it shows up in how we lead and invest in others, how others have invested in us. And I guess it's paying it forward is truly what you have done, and long before it's ever recognized or celebrated with medals or citations, it really is that conversation you had when walking across an area and someone saying, ma'am, you never changed. As you think about the legacy that you built, and as others think about the legacy they're building, what be the last nugget you'd give them before we close this show?
I would say be the best person they can possibly be, and be consistent in being that best person, because somebody is going to need to have a conversation with you as they had with me at an event I was at. Someone walked up to me. I was in my formal dress mess, and I know you want us to break contact, but I'll just say this. There are folks out there who need uplift. And so being able to help someone through a bad situation, I was just very grateful to be at the right place at the right time. I didn't know them. They didn't know me. But they were in a bad position. And so being able to take time when you see somebody that needs a little helping hand, take the time to go off the azimuth you were originally on. You know how many times we go through a hallway and says, hey, how you doing? Most of the times people say I'm doing well. And then there's going to be that time when they say, not so well, ma'am. And this was a moment that I actually lived to tell the story or live through when someone said they were hurting and needed that extra help. But Allie, it was a wonderful 38-year journey. I'm still in the mix in terms of serving. And I'm just so grateful for having met you now, 14 plus years ago, and actually longer than that, more like 16 years ago. And I'm just so grateful for your leadership, for you taking on this leadership podcast that you're doing such a wonderful job with. It's an honor to be here. And thank you for having me.
Well, General Bingham, thank you so much for your service and the service that you continue to provide. And folks, give a round of applause wherever you are right now. But if you're driving, keep both hands on the wheel. And remember that your legacy will continue to shape, and our listeners will continue to know the name of Lieutenant General Gwen Bingham, U.S. Army retired, because if it's real conversations and real leaders that you want to listen to and talk with, join us on Off the Record, the Real Talk podcast. We'll be with you as we begin our new season in February. Stay tuned. This is the last episode of our season. I'll probably do a quick 15-minute wrap up on the season of Voices of Leadership. But we have had from 4-star to 3-star to general managers of public information share with you golden nuggets of what's happening. Gwen Bingham, thanks for joining us. Folks, look forward to seeing you. Remember, if it's 6 o'clock on a Wednesday, it's time for Off the Record, the Real Talk podcast.